Hey guys, this is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to talk about 4 major exercises to hit a massive bench press. Now, whether you bench press 185 to 585, these exercises will help you tremendously. But before we get to the exercises, please like, subscribe, and comment on some exercises that's helped you break massive plateau barriers in the bench press. I think we've all been there. I remember sticking in my first time being able to bench 200 pounds when I was a kid, then worked my way up to 3, 4, 5, and then 600 pounds. So we've all had those sticking points, and I can remember distinct sticking points for over a year, just being confused on not know what to do. I didn't know which exercises to perform. I didn't know what to apply in my training. But there were 4 major exercises in this last 30 years of training that I started to utilize more often, and wouldn't you know it, my bench press went up. So let's go over these 4 exercises now. Remember, these 4 exercises are not the end-all be-all. You don't need to do just these 4. We usually rotate somewhere between 25 and 35 different exercises on the different platforms on Train Heroic, Patreon, or custom online coaching, depending on what type of equipment people have. But these exercises are a staple and are done at least in each mesocycle. First exercise that I learned as a kid was a board press. Now the board press seems odd. How would that help a full range of motion going partial range? But what you'll find is that for a lot of people, they'll stick at a certain point in the bench press, usually 2 to 4 inches off the chest. This is when the chest and the shoulders tend to stop helping, and then it becomes a complete arm exercise. So in my personal opinion, when you break down the bench press, it's mostly an arm exercise. There's some data to back that up. But what you want to find is that, are you training those exact sticking points? And sticking points are usually the limit, or what we call mini-max. That means that you might be certain strength at range of motion, but at the weakest point is where you are stuck. You're not going to get any better. And so training that sticking point is important. I've shot other videos on YouTube of us doing pin presses and floor presses, and uneducated people and people that don't have a lot of experience are like, why wouldn't you just do a full bench press? Because we're working on our mini max. And so mini maxes are very, very important for all the lifts, but especially the bench press. Why? Well, it's pretty interesting. When we evolved, or however you want to believe, the shoulder got designed to be more of a range of motion joint than actually a strength joint. So this means that we traded off just brute strength for more fine-tuned motor skills. This means that we have to train the bench press very carefully and effectively to make sure that it goes up, because what we have to remember is that the shoulder is really a stabilizing joint. It's not necessarily made to have massive pressing power. So we have to almost trick it in a certain way in order to get massive press. Well, how do we do that? We train our mini maxes, and this means sometimes it's range of motion reducing exercises like the board press. The board press was introduced to me at about 15 years old when I was benching 315. And when I started utilizing the board press a little bit more often, what I found is that the board press actually shot my bench to 365 within a year. So from sophomore in high school to a junior in high school, by utilizing the board press occasionally, what I found is my bench press went up about 50 pounds in high school, which was a big bench in the state and national rankings of that time. So the point is, guys, is that don't neglect doing partial ranges of motion, especially if they are in your weakest links. This is why with the board presses, we do anything from 1 boards to 2 boards to 3 boards, maybe even 4 or 5 boards. A lot of people get this confused with shirt pressing or bench pressing with equipment, but in reality, board presses can be very effective for raw bench press strength. So the next exercise that I want to talk about is chaotic bench pressing, and you can do this all kinds of different ways. But the best way to do this, in my opinion, is with the bamboo bar and with hanging kettlebells. Now, I was first introduced to this at about 19, 20 years old. So I was benching 500 pounds, but I was stuck at 500 pounds for about a year and a half. And I was just banging my head against the same wall, not figuring it out. And what I found was that my shoulders weren't stable enough and my triceps weren't strong enough, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the bamboo or hanging kettlebell bench press started to really show me that my stabilizers were absolute garbage and they needed to be better. Once I started implementing the bamboo bar or chaotic pressing into my training, what I found was my shoulders were more stable And no matter how big you are upper body musculature is smaller than lower body musculature, right? And if we know that the shoulder is a stabilizing joint versus just a strength and power joint, then we know that all the small muscles play an integral part in making our bench press super strong. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that the stabilizer muscles are trying to grow at the same rate as the pecs, the anterior delts, and the lats and the triceps, which is hard to do. Think about all the friends that we have that tear rotator cuffs, hurt their shoulders, all the small muscles that are attached, subscapular muscles, rhomboids. All of these areas are crucial, and the ones that don't activate are usually the ones that are going to cause the injury. What I have found is that doing unstable environment training tends to make my shoulder more stable and my pressing power go up. When I started introducing the bamboo bar or chaotic training into my particular repertoire at about 20 years old, my bench press went up another 50 pounds, meaning that my stabilizers needed to grow at the same rate as my large muscle groups. So don't neglect chaotic training, because you don't see a lot of people do it, and therefore they're going to pay the price later down the road with massive sticking points that they can't figure out. Okay, so now I'm bench and pressing around 535, 550, and I need to get up to the 600 range. Now I'm sitting close to 26, 28 years old, and I start seeing these, and I was introduced to this beforehand, but I didn't really start blasting it into my training until about at this time, which would have been around 2005 to 2008. Started listening to a guy named J.M. Blakely and the guys at Westside Barbell talking about the J.M. press. The J.M. press is a variation of a bench press, which is mostly tricep dominant exercise. Remember, we talked about triceps being the dominant press from the beginning of the video. When the J.M. press goes up usually 5 or 10 pounds, my bench press went up 10 or 15 or 20 pounds, meaning it was almost a double return in my training. So we started utilizing the J.M. presses a ton in the training, and next thing you know it, my bench press starts creeping close to 600. Now, there's all kinds of ways that we can do the J.M. press. We can do it with a standard bar, but my favorite way to do it is with a safety bar. The safety bar forces the rotation to be more precise, and it forces the bar to go exactly where it should, which is right at the chin or below the chin level. So it's actually making you rotate in the right area. As my J.M. press got stronger, my bench press went up effectively double what I could J.M. press, as far as if I gained 5 or 10 pounds on the J.M. press, I gained 10 or 20 pounds on the bench press, especially with the safety bar. When my bench press got close to a 600-pound bench, I was doing 405 for sets of 5 with this J.M. press with the safety bar, which would break a normal person's arms completely in half. But the point is that if you build that J.M. press, watch your bench press skyrocket. And again, this was another exercise that really broke the plateau of the 500 range closer to the 600 range. So the year's 2011 and I'm going into 2012. I'm retiring from competitive lifting and equipped, and I'm flipping to raw. A lot of that drive was Powerlifting USA, and a lot of the other powerlifting magazines and outlets were really starting to showcase raw lifters, and I was just young enough to hit some raw totals. So what I figured is it's time for me to switch to raw as well. So in 2012, I start the process of the 600-pound actual bench press in a contest. And what I started to find was that this exercise had been in my routines for quite a while. But once I started really pushing this exercise, it built my bench press way above 600 pounds, and it stabilized at 611 with a all-time world record squat before this 611 bench press. And that exercise is the floor press. Now, the floor press is an exercise. It's another limited range of motion, just like the boards. But what it's doing is you're actually having to stop on your elbows and smash your tricep, unlike the boards. So when you do that, the muscle has to completely relax and you almost sit on the bone. Now, we do this with foam pads underneath us sometimes in order for us to blunt the impact on the elbow. You don't want to slam down to the ground. You want to touch and slowly relax and then press from a dead stop. That pressure on the tricep actually shuts it down. So on the floor press, you want to treat it like a slow, controlled eccentric with a full compression to the floor and then press. When I was ready to bench press 600 pounds, I did 585 for a double on this lift, so that's 645s on each side. Pretty easy in training, and the 600-pound bench press was not a big deal at all. So these are the 4 major exercises that we use to bench press. If you're unfamiliar or not know which reps or sets or when to use them, the best thing to do is hop on one of our online platforms, either Top Tier Patreon or Train Heroic, and we can rotate that training for you so you're not overdoing the exact same exercise. Or at the biggest, most effective way, you can hop on our online coaching where we'll custom design all of this stuff directly for you and your equipment needs and how many times a week you can train, etc. Remember that these 4 exercises broke massive plateaus in my training, and they will yours as well if you use them correctly. So hop on winningstrength.com, check out our services, and we'll hope to see you there and help you get the strongest you can get without sustaining any injuries.
I'm on a strength training program from a world-class powerlifter, a world record-holding powerlifter, Matt Wenning, and I tagged him on this. Matt came by a few weeks ago. He was going across the United States on his Harley Davidson, and he stopped by. And a couple of years ago, he had made a program for me, but it was so foreign to me, it didn't make sense. Man, he sat down, broke down the program for me, so now I understand it. And it's been a lot of fun training with so much structure and with so much focus on posterior chain. My glutes, my hamstrings, my low back is weaker than a fucking kitten. It's embarrassing. So we're focusing on that. It's a well-rounded program, which you don't just do the traditional lifts. You're training a lot of accessory stuff, tricep stuff to improve your lifts. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the program's going to do me. I'm on do for me. I'm in the 3rd week. It's a 12-week process, so it's going to be fun.